This is the Beyonce dollar bill shot out like confetti during the Cowboy Carter tour. This is the image on the bill. It's from this interlude on the tour where she wears the Reclamation of America sash. This is the US $1 bill. It has the face of George Washington on it, America's first president. This is Jay-Z's song Dead Presidents 2 on Reasonable Doubt. There's a lyric where Jay-Z raps, "Your paper falls slow like confetti." Beyonce's paper is confetti, shot out of cannons during Bills. This is the 1999 film Dead Presidents. It follows a young black veteran who, abandoned by the country he served, turns to robbery to survive. This is Beyonce in the 2024 Verizon commercial where she's not POTUS, President of the United States, but BOTUS, Beyonce of the United States. At the time, we didn't know, but this was quite a tease, because on these bills, we see her face replacing that of a president. She would then be a Beyonce of the United States. America has a money problem. In this video, I will be exploring how the dollar bill points to Act 3, why I believe it's rock, the dark history of American currency, and why George Washington and the Washington Monument is central to it all. This is video 2 in my America Has a Problem series. In part 1, I covered how America has a Wall Street problem. If diving deep into symbolism speaks to you, hi, my name is Lawbreakers, and I break down Beyonce's work through myth, symbolism, and meaning. 60% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed yet, but subscribing is the best way to help this channel grow. I make these videos in my own spare time, and with your support, I'd love to turn it into something I could do full time. Help me keep bringing you the best videos I can, and please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Time for a deep dive. Part 1. The dollar bill. See if you can catch what's strange here. Everything on these bills is customized. From the BKC 9481, Beyonce Knowles Carter and her birthday, September 4th, 1981, the signature being hers instead of the treasurer's, these number 4s on each corner, it says Cowboy Carter Tour instead of the Federal Reserve note. Even in the super small print, we see Beyonce with an I spelled here where Washington's name would be. But what is the one most obvious thing that's not customized on these bills that you would think would be? The amount of the bill. It is still a $1 bill. Why isn't it a $4 bill? Considering 4 is her favorite number, and there are 4s throughout the bill, why did she leave the amount as 1? This is not a forgetful mistake or something insignificant, because during her London and Paris stops of the Cowboy Carter tour, the currency was changed to a £4 note and a €4 note. This was a detail they did not forget to change. They purposefully left the US currency as a $1 bill. I believe this is a signal towards Act 3. Beyonce is slotting herself in the place of George Washington's face, as he is the president on the $1 bill. She wants us, I think, to reimagine what America could be if she were the one to purify her father's sins, a founding father, as she sings in American Requiem. Washington was the founding father, but this is a requiem for his vision of America, Cowboy Carter that is. A funeral for the old ideals and the birth of a new mythology, where a black woman takes the place of the first president to rewrite what this country could stand for. Here's another clue on the bill. There are 8 shorthands for her 8 albums, but at the end it says 2025. We have Dangerously in Love, B-Day, I Am Sasha Fierce, 4, self-titled, Lemonade, Renaissance, Cowboy Carter, landing us at the 9th thing in this sequence, which is 2025. B9. We know Beyonce likes numbers, astrology, and numerology, all those kinds of things, given the references of them in her work over the years. So I think it's no stretch that 2025 sitting in the slot in this sequence where her next album would be, her 9th album, B9, that 2025 adds up to the number 9. 2 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. Symbolically, 9 is a threshold, the last step before something ends, transforms, or ascends. It's the last single-digit number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 is a funeral before the rebirth, the last breath before the next life. Perfect if you're telling a story about the death of an old world and a vision for a new one. We know Cowboy Carter was supposed to be before Renaissance, making the order Cowboy Carter as B7, Renaissance as B8, and Act 3, possibly called Black Betty, B9. Do I think it's saying 2025 means B9 will be out this year? I'm not sure. All I know is that the crumbs I'm picking up is that B9 would be the perfect wrapping of a 3-act trilogy with the significance of the number 9. But it wouldn't just end there. The next thing I believe to come will be a secret Act 4. This would be B10. I think this is going to be both an album and a film, maybe a video game, but The secret Act 4 that I'm predicting would be the 10th album, and in numerology, B10 would be a 1, because 1 plus 0 equals 1. 1 is a new beginning. Alien superstar, I'm the one, I'm number one, I'm the only one. But this video is about money, so let's get back to the cash, follow the money, and the dark history of how our paper currency was started. Part 2, Confederate Cash. American paper money, as we know it today, was formerly established during the Civil War, not just as a financial necessity, but as a political tool. Both the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South started printing their own paper money in 1861. Starting with the North, the Union, the U.S. government began printing what were called greenbacks, named for their distinctive green ink. Greenbacks helped stabilize the Northern economy at a time of great turmoil. Greenbacks feature a range of symbolic imagery designed to protect national strength and moral authority during this time of crisis, being the war. Many of these notes included allegorical figures such as personifications of Lady Liberty, victory, justice, and commerce, depicted as classically dressed white women in Greco-Roman robes, reinforcing these ideals of freedom and righteousness. Alongside these images appeared iconic symbols of the American state, such as eagles, flags, shields, stars, and the Capitol building, all meant to assert the legitimacy and the unity of the Union. Union greenbacks opted for a sanitized version of American ideals, projecting what the nation claimed to be, rather than confronting the brutal realities it was built on, because even though in the North, slavery was not common, it was the South that is so famous for their love of slavery, but the North still benefited from the slavery and the economy that it built via Wall Street, which is what I covered in my Wall Street video. As greenbacks helped stabilize the Union economy during the Civil War, the color became linked with trust and national trust. Green came to represent real money in people's minds, not just currency, but federal authority. When the U.S. formalized and expanded the national currency system after the war was won by the Union, the North, they kept the green color as a visual legacy of the Union's financial victory. That is why money is still green today. However, the South, like it usually did, decided to depict their money in a much different way during the Civil War. At the same time, in 1861, the Confederacy issued its own currency, decorated with images of enslaved black people laboring in fields, a brutal reminder that their economy was built entirely on slavery, and they were very proud of it. These bills openly depicted the systems they were fighting to preserve in the Civil War. Scenes of cotton harvesting, sugarcane cutting, and plantation labor appeared alongside portraits of Confederate politicians, neoclassical women, and symbols of Southern agriculture and trade like trains, ships, and bales of cotton. This was not subtle, it was propaganda in plain sight. While the Union's greenbacks avoided any reference of slavery, Confederate money served as a visual declaration that black labor was the foundation of Southern wealth, and they needed to preserve that. Their currency didn't just fund the war. It told you exactly why they were fighting it. Confederate money made it unmistakably clear. Black bodies were their currency. It's interesting that Lincoln appears on the smallest and least valued piece of U.S. currency, the penny, the currency worth the least. It is 1/100th of a dollar. History books will say they put Lincoln on the penny as an act of respect as it was made to commemorate his 100th birthday, but that just doesn't sit right with me. Even if it was a subconscious decision to put him on the least valued piece of currency, it's something interesting to think about. Even more striking is that the penny is set to be discontinued in 2026, the first time in 55 years that an American coin or piece of currency will be retired. This means that the face of the man who did the most to advance African American freedom in the highest office of government is quietly being erased from everyday transactions, removed from the very currency that represents value and exchange. The disappearance of the penny symbolizes a subtle but powerful fading of Lincoln's presence in American consciousness, raising questions about whose legacies are preserved and whose are diminished in our national story. Also, symbolically, I think it's interesting how all other coins are silver, which is basically white, while the penny is copper, it's brown. Also, the Statue of Liberty is copper, and the color prevents any confusion that it's worth anything more than 1 cent. Part 3. Washington. This is Beyonce on the $1 bill that usually has the face of George Washington on it, and Beyonce is seen here as the Beyonce of the United States in the Verizon ad. I talked about how the 3-act trilogy can be mapped across 3 monuments in the National Mall. A quick refresher on this theory of mine. The mall is laid out as the Washington Monument, the reflecting pool, and the Lincoln Memorial. It moves from the past, George Washington, the founding father and symbol of power built on slavery, through to the present, where the reflecting pool invites the nation to literally and metaphorically reflect to the future, represented by Lincoln, the president who ended slavery, and his memorial has become a site for protests in progress, being the site of where Martin Luther King Jr. spoke his I Have a Dream speech. It's a straight line through America's soul, this National Mall. Who we were, what we see, and who we might become. I'm theorizing that Act 4 is going to be centered around the Capitol building, but more on that in another video. Beyonce stepping into this geography isn't just aesthetic, it's symbolic. She walks along the length of the National Mall during the 400-foot Cowboy interlude. Cowboy Carter is the Lincoln Memorial. We see this image, her as Lincoln is the one she chose to put on the official DC t-shirt, her embodying Lincoln. She winks at his monument in the 400-foot Cowboy interlude as if they have something going on between them, like I'm going to continue the work that you did and I'm going to bring more respect to your name because I see they're trying to erase you. That's at least how I read it. And Renaissance is the reflecting pool, positioned between the past and future, a space of reflection, self-expression, and transformation. My interpretation of the disco balls used throughout Renaissance is that it's made of shattered mirrors, like the reflection of African Americans that they've been made to see of themselves. It's not a true reflection because the mirrors have been broken, but their shattered spirit is strong and comes back together despite being broken, and it's even more beautiful and dazzling, reflecting the light. All of the broken pieces of the disco ball are much more beautiful than if the glass was never even shattered, and that is that resilient spirit of African Americans. That's how I interpret it. Act 3, I'll call it Black Betty, is the Washington Monument, I think. And this is where the dollar bill and Washington comes into play, and why I think she chose to keep the $1 bill a $1, because it's directly pointing to Washington, the Washington Monument, and the BS that this country was founded on. The Washington Monument is a giant, phallic, hard rock. Hard rock. Music, born in the late 1960s and early 70s, was largely created and popularized by white male musicians who drew on blues, rock and roll, and psychedelic influences. We all know this. We know that she's been theorizing that it's going to be Act 3 rock, but I think the Washington Monument is central to this because the Washington Monument represents the white patriarchy. The signature elements of rock music are powerful electric guitars, heavy drums, and aggressive vocals. They became symbols of raw masculinity, rebellion, and dominance. The genre's hard-hitting sound and often phallic guitar shapes even express virility and power. The Washington Monument, this towering white obelisk, is a strikingly hard rock-like presence that serves as the powerful symbol of white male patriarchal influence and colonial power in America. Beyonce's turn toward rock music in Act 3, I think, would be seen as her confronting and reclaiming this patriarchal monument, the giant hard rock, using the very language of hard rock to subvert and challenge the male-dominated systems it represents. Through this, she transformed the symbol of dominance into a site of resistance and redefinition. But back to the money. Part 4, Dead Presidents. This is Jay-Z's song Dead Presidents 2 off his debut album Reasonable Doubt, where he raps, "Your paper falls slow like confetti." This is Beyonce's dollar bill confetti from the Cowboy Carter tour that is shot out of cannons during bills like confetti. And this is the film Dead Presidents. I'm going to tell you all of this is connected, starting with Jay-Z. In Jay-Z's song, he uses a pursuit of money as a metaphor, reflecting the pressures and paradoxes of being a black man in America, where basic financial survival can turn one to break the law. Jay-Z doesn't glorify crime in the song. Instead, he lays bare the emotional and moral conflict of engaging in illegal activity when legitimate success is inaccessible. As we know, he is from the Marcy Project in Brooklyn in New York. He came from a very tough background. The song captures the feeling of being locked out of the American system and how for many, wealth becomes the only way to reclaim dignity and power. I think it's interesting how African Americans have been locked out of these financial systems and then driven to maybe take part in criminal activities, but then it literally ends them up being locked up. It's like a lose-lose situation. You're going to be locked up and locked out either way. Just my thought. The repeated line in Dead Presidents 2 is, "I'm out for presidents to represent me." It cleverly underscores the dual meaning. He's chasing both literal cash and symbolic validation in a country where black life has been long devalued. By invoking the image of American currency, Jay-Z critiques the history of who gets to hold power, highlighting how figures like Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln represent a nation built on both freedom and oppression. By weaving his personal ambition with this systemic critique, Jay-Z frames his hustle not just as ambition, but a necessity, a direct consequence of being bored into a rigged game. This theme is still relevant today. as we saw in Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance, where Samuel L. Jackson appears as Black Uncle Sam, inviting us to play the Great American Game, a game rigged against them from the start. Good luck playing a game where the odds are stacked against you, and survival depends on navigating strategically. That's why Kendrick Lamar's stage during the Super Bowl in 2024 features a PlayStation controller as the tour stage design, and his current GNX tour takes the same shape of these PlayStation controller shapes, making his stage. He's using gaming as a metaphor for the systemic oppression, and playing this game. I believe Act 3, Beyonce's stage, will be a square, as Cowboy Carter was a triangle and Renaissance was a circle. I think the next one is going to be a square. Or perhaps Act 3 is going to be an X. However, I'm leaning towards square, especially because of this picture where her earrings map out exactly those stages. I also predict that the sizes of the triangles and squares and circles on this earring is pertaining to the size of the tour. So Cowboy Carter was her smallest tour. Renaissance was her second largest. And I think that Act 3 is going to be a real global tour because it's the biggest shape on this. And Renaissance was not technically a world tour because it only went to America and Europe. I theorize that Beyonce is creating a video game exploring similar themes hinted at in the Verizon commercial where she has this Twitch profile. I believe she's going to be using an immersive format of a game to critique the systems that Black Americans are forced to navigate and survive within. It also helps to explain why she was in Japan for the release of Cowboy Carter. I suspect the game will be launched through Sony, the parent company of Columbia Records, her label, that she co-releases with Parkwood, as well as a collaboration with PlayStation. I'll dive deeper in another video. Back to Jay-Z's Dead Presidents and Kendrick Lamar's Great American Game. Jay-Z released two versions of Dead Presidents, the original in early 1996 as a promotional single and the more polished Dead Presidents 2, which appears on his debut album Reasonable Doubt. Both versions are using the same haunting ski beats instrumental and sample Nas's The World Is Yours, but feature different verses. While Jay-Z never officially released a Dead Presidents 3, Kendrick Lamar picked up the thread in 2010 when he was still an up-and-coming artist. In an unofficial remix called Dead Presidents 3, he's rapping over the same beat and titled it in homage to Jay-Z. Kendrick's version pays this homage to Jay-Z while reframing the hustle narrative through a West Coast lens. His verse is less about status, more about the psychological toll of chasing money in a rigged system, and the same nuanced and psychological lens that we've come to associate with Kendrick Lamar. In fact, it's the same narrative he's been sharing throughout his GNX tour today. Though the songs were never formally connected, fans see that Kendrick's Dead Presidents 3 is this spiritual successor that completes an unofficial trilogy, echoing the same themes of exclusion, survival, and what it costs to play the Great American Game. It's a perfect full-circle moment that Kendrick Lamar was chosen to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show, which Jay-Z curates. So, we have Beyonce showering dollar bill confetti during her Cowboy Carter tour, echoing Jay-Z's Dead Presidents 2 lyric, "Your paper falls slow like confetti," while the verses reveal the rigged nature of the American game. Kendrick Lamar carries the same theme forward with the Black Uncle Sam. We see Beyonce as a Black female Uncle Sam in the Cowboy Carter visuals. She's continuing the conversation about systemic inequality and survival within a stacked-to-deck rigged game. These are exactly the same themes within the 1990 film Dead Presidents, directed by the Hughes brothers. Dead Presidents centers around a character named Anthony Curtis, a young Black man from a poor neighborhood who enlists in the Vietnam War, seeking a way out of the limited and oppressive circumstances of his life. Being a cog in the system of modern America is akin to modern-day slavery. Motivated by the hope for a better future, financial stability, and a chance to prove himself, Anthony joins the military alongside some of his friends, believing the military service will offer opportunity and respect. Keep this fact in mind for something I'll bring up in the future. During the war, Anthony experiences trauma on the battlefield, witnessing death, violence, and dehumanizing effects of war, leaving deep psychological scars, as it would. When Anthony returns to the Bronx in 1973 after serving in Vietnam, he finds that his life has been impossible to rebuild. He can't support his partner and child, and all of his friends are suffering, even though they've made this great sacrifice of serving in the war. His friends are suffering everything from addiction, to missing limbs, to severe PTSD, and they're all in a terrible situation after coming back. Pushed to the edge by poverty, trauma, and abandonment by the American system, Anthony and his crew plan to rob an armored bank truck. They are all struggling to survive after returning from Vietnam, and they see the robbery as their only chance to escape their desperate circumstances. The heist becomes a last resort for men who feel abandoned by the country they served. It's not just about the money. It's a form of rebellion and survival against a system that betrayed him. Armed and calculating, Anthony orchestrates the robberies with his friends, using their military training and street smarts to attempt to outmaneuver the authorities. In the climactic heist scene, Anthony and his crew paint their faces stark white, ghostly, corpse-like, almost otherworldly, essentially whiteface. This haunting imagery serves as a powerful symbolism. They become the dead presidents themselves, literally and figuratively. On one level, the white face evokes death, a nod to how a system chews up black bodies through war, poverty, incarceration, and slavery. On another, it reflects how black Americans are often forced to embody what the system values most: money or martyrdom. By turning themselves into living symbols of the American currency and death, the characters are making a chilling statement about a country that only sees value in black lives when they're either profitable or sacrificed. His actions expose the harsh reality that when society fails its veterans, especially its marginalized black veterans, many are pushed towards illegal paths as a mean to assert power, dignity, and security in a world that refuses to offer them legitimate opportunities to survive. In the end of the movie, it's no happy ending. All of Anthony's friends are either offed, arrested, or have overdosed, and when Anthony shows up in court, his lawyer pleads to the judge to have a lenient sentencing to understand, as he is a veteran and he underwent so much trauma fighting for America. However, the judge shows no mercy, proclaiming that Anthony has forgotten his values and shouldn't use the Vietnam War as an excuse for his actions, sentencing him to 15 years to life. That is how the movie ends. It's a heartbreaking ending to the film, and it shows how the judge just sees Anthony as forgetting his values and doesn't even consider why he chose to go to war, what he gave up for going to war, what brought him to rob the bank truck, and it's not thought that maybe America lost its values along the way. I also think it's interesting how it was a bank heist, as I have done my theories about how Beyonce's bang gun and the whole significance of bang. She even used the bang guns in the tour. She used it in her Cowboy Carter imagery. She even uses it all the way back in the Renaissance visuals, and the bang gun is famously associated with the Joker. I cover it in this video here, more in detail about the Joker, but he famously does bank heists, and in this picture from the Renaissance tour book, she is in what looks like some kind of bank vault with the bang gun. So that's interesting. In summary, Dead Presidents offers a complex and nuanced view of crime, challenging the simple good versus bad narrative that often dominates mainstream portrayals. Anthony isn't portrayed as a villain, but a man trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Trauma from war, economic hardship, racial injustice, and social abandonment. The film also sheds light on the broader context of black veterans returning from Vietnam, many who face neglect, discrimination, and lack of support. By humanizing Anthony and his crew, the movie invites viewers to empathize with their plight and understand crime as a symptom of systemic injustice rather than simply individual moral failure. Through this lens, Dead Presidents reveals how desperation, trauma, and social marginalization creates a pressure cooker that can lead to crime, not as a choice made lightly, but as a last resort. These are themes that Jay-Z raps about. These are themes that Kendrick Lamar talks about. And this is the theme that I believe that Act 3 is going to be exploring. Now, this brings me to this. This is Beyonce wearing a Buffalo Soldier shirt. Very controversially, the Buffalo Soldiers were black men who served in segregated regiments of the U.S. Army beginning in 1866, shortly after the Civil War. Many were formerly enslaved people or the children of enslaved people. They enlisted because it offered them the only stable, paid job available to black men at the time. In the 1800s, it was a potential escape from poverty, violence, and systemic racism in the South. Some were promised land, pensions, or a better life, though these promises were often under-delivered or denied altogether. Tragically, much of the Buffalo Soldiers' service involved fighting Native American tribes and the so-called Indian Wars, helping to push westward expansion and enforce U.S. policy. In essence, these Buffalo Soldiers were used by the same system that helped enslave them. Now, they are being used as tools of imperialism. The question of why they would fight and harm Native American people is not as simple as black or white. Like I said, this is nuance. Fighting in this war was their only way of some kind of promise of freedom, of making money, of a paid job. This was their only form of escape to possibly help themselves and their families. So it's very nuanced and very murky. The U.S. government offered these men survival, status, and purpose, all while pitting marginalized groups against each other, Native Americans versus African Americans. But the real enemy was the white imperialist. It's similar to what Anthony in Dead Presidents believed he would get by fighting in the Vietnam War: survival, status, and purpose. But he was harming innocent Vietnamese people in the war. Do you see it's the same thing? However, like Anthony in Dead Presidents, these Buffalo Soldiers didn't anticipate the brutalities of what the war would entail. The Buffalo Soldiers did not know what they would be doing, and they didn't understand that they would ultimately be helping those who oppressed them. They were taken in vulnerable states, manipulated to believe doing this would help them, it would be a good thing, and it didn't. Just like Anthony was a forgotten veteran. There was no thanks, he only came back more miserable than before. It's a painful and historical irony. Black soldiers helping to suppress other oppressed people in exchange for a foothold in a system designed to keep them both at the margins, and the one who benefits financially and with power is the imperialist system. Like I said, the legacy echoes through stories like in Dead Presidents, where systems use people in times of war or need, building an economy only to discard them once they are no longer useful, reinforcing the cycle of desperation. All of these themes remind me of a lyric from Jay-Z's song Murder to Excellence on his album Watch the Throne. He raps, "If you put crabs in the barrel to ensure your survival, you're gonna end pulling down N-words that look just like you. What up, blood? What up, cuz? It's all black, I love us." That saying crabs in the barrel comes from an observation that when crabs are placed in a bucket, if one tries to climb out, the other will pull the crab back down. When there's only one crab in the barrel, it can easily climb out. But when many crabs are trapped together, they grab onto each other trying to escape instead of helping. They end up pulling each other down, causing them all to fall. It's personally one of my favorite Jay-Z lyrics, as it captures in such a simple but powerful metaphor how marginalized communities are trapped in cycles of internal struggle and conflict. Just like the crabs trapped in a barrel, pulling each other down to prevent anyone from escaping, systemic oppression fosters competition, distrust, and violence within these communities. We actually see this in the Dead Presidents film as well, when Anthony's friend, Cleon, who was part of the heist, got caught, took a plea deal with the police, pointing him in the direction of his friends to try to save himself. This metaphor reflects the heartbreaking reality of black-on-black violence, or black-on-other marginalized people violence, not as a cause but as a symptom of larger forces at play, such as poverty, disenfranchisement, and structural racism. It reminds us that the true enemy isn't each other, but the systems designed to keep marginalized people divided and powerless. Again, follow the money. Who is benefiting financially from all of these wars? War is an extremely profitable endeavor. This is Jay-Z's film, The Harder They Fall. This is a modern-day film that covers the same themes as the 1999 film Dead Presidents, however in a very different stylistic way. It was a film produced by Jay-Z and released in 2021. It's a black neo-spaghetti western. It focuses on the retelling of the real-life Rufus Buck Gang, a notorious black outlaw group active in the early 20th century in Oklahoma. The gang was formed by young black men who, like Anthony Curtis in Dead Presidents, were driven by desperation and systemic oppression and a sense of abandonment by the society that ousted them. Living in a post-Reconstruction America where Jim Crow laws, racial violence, and economic exclusion severely limited black freedom and prosperity, these men turned to crime as an act of resistance and survival. The Rufus Buck Gang engaged in a series of violent robberies, assaults, and kidnappings primarily targeted at white settlers and landowners who represented the power structures that oppressed black communities. Their actions were fueled not just by greed, but by a profound frustration with a society that continually denied them justice and opportunity. We of course have Beyonce's song Spaghetti and this flashing spaghetti western on the screen during the Cowboy Carter tour, as well as this interlude which shows a classic spaghetti western style shootout with a cast of black cowboys against a white one. A spaghetti western is a style of western film that emerged in the 1960s, mostly produced by Italian filmmakers, hence the name spaghetti. These films were grittier, bloodier, and more stylized than the American westerns, often featuring anti-heroes, complex characters, minimal dialogue, morally ambiguous characters, dramatic showdowns, like in Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, starring Clint Eastwood. Also a wild coincidence is that one of the most famous spaghetti westerns ever was something called the Dollars Trilogy, starring Clint Eastwood, directed by Sergio Leone, and it featured the films A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Last year I did a video on spaghetti westerns just based on the track list when it was dropped saying spaghetti. I immediately knew this was going to be spaghetti westerns, which I predicted correctly, and that video still holds a lot of information. You can watch it here. The Harder They Fall, again produced by Jay-Z, takes the genre of spaghetti westerns and reimagines it through this black lens through the Rufus Buck Gang. It uses all the hallmarks of a spaghetti western, stylized violent, revenge-driven plots, tense standoffs, and big scores, but centers the black characters who historically are erased from the Western genre, just like they are erased from country music, despite their presence in that era. As this film came out in 2021, when Cowboy Carter would have certainly been in production, we know Jay-Z and Beyonce must have been discussing how these themes overlapped in their respective works when they were creating them. The Harder They Fall, Dead Presidents, The Great American Game, America Has a Problem, all these highlight how systemic failure have long forced black individuals into desperate and dangerous forms of resistance and lives of crime because they were desperate, showing that the fight against oppression is both timeless, nuanced, and ongoing. So, we've covered a lot in this video, but the through line is that America has a money problem. Not the actual money and its monetary value, but the faces that are on the money, the symbols and the history putting enslaved people on it, Washington, and what these white dead presidents represented in this country, and continues to do in new ways. I don't think that it's a coincidence that Lincoln is on the 1 penny. Meanwhile, Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill. It's clear that the images on our money honor those white folks who uphold white male patriarchy and oppressive systems. The thing that we value that holds literal monetary value, money, has the symbols of these people on it. And I think that is the importance of Beyonce putting herself as a Beyonce of the United States on this bill and keeping it a $1 bill. Beyonce placing herself on the dollar is a signal to look at Washington, our founding father, the first dead presidents, and its ties to American Requiem. I believe Act 3 again is going to dive headfirst into all these themes we explore in this video, from survival, rebellion, systemic control, nuanced motivations, and it'll all be symbolized by the towering phallic Washington Monument, a pointed critique of patriarchal power and American myth-making. Closing the trilogy of Reclamation, I believe the crabs in the barrel metaphor and Despair and Dead Presidents and The Great American Game show how survival can turn into sabotage when the system is rigged, which is exactly what this Washington Monument represents. Beyonce's artistic vision pushes past all of this, breaking old structures so we can imagine a future where rising doesn't mean pulling each other down. And she sings in My House, lend your soul to intuition, Renaissance and Revolution, pick me up even if I fall. Crabs in the barrel, pick me up even if I fall. Let love heal us all. If you made it to the end of this video, comment an American flag and a $sign emoji, and let me know in the comments what hit home for you the most in this video, what you liked in it, what you resonated with. Was it about survival, rebellion, or betrayal? Have you ever felt stuck in a crabs in the barrel situation? And more importantly, how did you rise above it? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read them. Let's uplift each other, and maybe you can connect with some other Deep Dive Hive members and help each other out, motivate each other, and help build a community around each other. Don't forget to subscribe again to my channel to help it grow, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss when I drop a new video. There's going to be another in this America Has a Problem series. Don't you worry, as well as a lot of other exciting stuff, so you don't want to miss any of that. And lastly, if you want to support me further, you can always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/lorebreakers. Thank you to everyone who has donated and bought me a coffee. It honestly helps so much, and I cannot thank you enough. Even if it's $1, that helps me. Actually, the other day I bought a book, The Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois, at a thrift store, and it was $1. And I thought, you know what, this dollar came from someone who bought me a coffee, so thank you so much for that. You've just enriched my mind. Until next time, love or breakers.